Mr. Luke, what do you have to say for your defense? Your Honor, until when you have to walk in my shoes, until you have been through what I've been through, no matter what I say right now, none of my words will convince you. Very well. You are sentenced to 30 years in prison. The court hearing is adjourned. Seen from the outside, many could judge what I did diabolical. But to be sincere, today I regret my actions. But it is too late, I think, to be able to redeem myself. I bet you're also asking for the identity of the person who committed such a heinous crime. My name is Luke. I am 17 years old, and here is my story. Before we continue with the story, do not forget to click on the notification button in order to get notified at every new video posted. Thank you. At first, I came from a completely normal family. My parents got married when they were 27 and 31 years old, respectively. From what Mom told me, she and Dad were head over heels in love. When I was born, their love was concretized, but many financial worries arose, creating tension at home. According to what Mom told me, Dad had become more and more rare at home, under the pretext that he needed to work overtime to be able to support our family. He went out very early in the morning and came back very late at night. He often came home extremely nervous, and every time Mom tried to talk to him, she told me he had the tendency to become arrogant and borderline violent. Still, according to Mom's story, money had become so scarce at home that she was forced to stop being simply a housewife and started doing petty trade by the side of the road in order to be able to provide for my immediate needs and thus lessen the financial burden that rested entirely on my father. And according to her, these efforts did not seem to be enough for the man who served as her husband. She told me how he sank into depression to the point of becoming very violent and alcoholic. These arguments escalated and he started hitting her for a yes or a no. She told me that despite Dad's violent behavior, she tried to hold on to their marriage so that I could grow up with a dad by my side. But the atmosphere was starting to get harmful and dangerous, not just for her, but for me too. She told me that when I was 9 months old, one evening my dad came back home late as usual, and apparently unloading his briefcase and his jacket, he put his cell phone on the coffee table in the living room. Since I was already crawling, I grabbed his cell phone and quickly dunked it into the foamy water Mom had put aside after laundry. After finding out, she told me that Dad had gotten into such a rage that he beat me up to the point where I had bruises all over my back. And that's how Mom decided to leave the house because it was getting more and more dangerous for me. She left her marital home and moved to a town far away from where she and Dad lived. She told me how she had to toil for whole months without sources of income or financial support from anyone to be able to keep me from starving. After getting a job in a bar as a waitress, she was able to save enough money to hire a lawyer and file in for a divorce. She told me in great detail how her days went. She often had to drop me off at one of her neighbors in the morning to be able to go to work and leave her with some money so she could buy diapers or milk in case I ran out of them during the day, and pick me up in the evening on her return. After months of legal battle, she was able to obtain a divorce and my custody. According to her, Dad was condemned to pay alimony, which despite her pleas were never paid. She also made me understand that on several occasions, she went to his office in order to be able to meet with Dad's supervisor without success. After 2 years of insistence, she had to give up and resolved to take care of me on her own. Time passed and I grew up too. When I was 12, Mom had enough money to start her own business. She was now independent and had flexible schedule, which allowed her to spend more time with me. She could now attend my football matches at school and help me with my homework in the evening. I began to be happy with the fact that I was feeling the presence of a parent, but it was short-lived. During one of her monthly trips during which she was restocking the shop, she was a victim of a serious accident which caused her extremely serious injuries. Once transported to the hospital, the police forces who made the report of the accident in which she was involved informed me of the place where she was. I joined my mom at the hospital room where she was, and after an interview with the police commissioner in charge of the report in question, he asked me about other members of my family who could take care of me while Mom was still hospitalized. I told him I had no one but my mom. He took pity and wanted to place me in a foster home, But I insisted on wanting to stay by Mom's side to be able to take care of her. Taken by compassion, he granted me this favor of not placing me into a foster home immediately. A few weeks after Mom's hospitalization, she unfortunately passed away. Her injuries were way too serious. My world was falling apart. I had nowhere to go to. I didn't even have enough experience to be able to make the shop work. I was only 12 years old. I didn't even know how to cook myself a dish of pasta, much less of facing life all by myself. I was lost. This is how after the funeral service took place, I was placed in a foster home. But deep inside, I had hatred towards life, but mainly towards my father who had abandoned us. Deep down, I told myself that if he had been a real man, he would not have abandoned us the way he did. He could have separated from Mom because, of course, divorces happen in life, but he should have at least cared about me and what I was going to become. But no, he chose to throw us in oblivion. The more time passed, the more I hated him. What made this feeling of hatred intensify were the acts of abuse I suffered in the foster home. I was insulted, beaten, and harassed by other children, in addition to the tutors who were too strict. I was going through hell every day. I suffered so much psychologically that I went back to looking for the number of the police commissioner who a few years ago was in charge of reporting the accident in which my mom was involved. I found him and I told him about the story I was going through. And I also told him about my father, as well as the town in which I was born. I begged the policeman to try find my father so that I could finally escape the suffering I was going through in the foster home. Certainly I hated him, but I could no longer bear this treatment that I suffered from people whose blood I didn't even share. The search went faster than I even thought, and within a few weeks, the commissioner was able to find my father, and I was taken back to my hometown to meet him for the first time. On the day of our meeting, we came face to face, but I had no emotion in me. He took me into his arms and shed tears of joy, asking me what I was going through and how I was. I answered him smiling, but in reality, I felt no love. All I saw was the possibility of escaping from the shelter where I was living. And without me even asking, he offered me to come and live with him and his family. He had a wife and a 4-year-old son. Of course I accepted. I could finally have peace. The following week, I moved in with them. I had a very smooth contact with my stepmom and my little brother. My stepmom seemed to be a very sweet and kind woman. She welcomed me with open arms, and that day she had prepared a dinner dish fit for kings to receive me. My little brother was very polite for his age. He said hello and asked me how I was doing. My father, on the other hand, seemed so moved to see me that he kept holding my hand and looking at me in the eyes with a tearful look. It seemed so odd for me for someone who had abandoned Mom and I. Anyway, deep down, I was firm on my position. I would never love him after everything Mom told me. The weeks passed, and my mom trusted me more and more. She entrusted me with crucial tasks around the house, and sometimes even entrusted me with money to keep. But none of that had any impact on how I felt about them. On the contrary, I even felt more hatred because I thought that all the privileges that they lived should have been mine. Consumed by hatred, I started hating my little brother more. And so one day, while my stepmom went out for shopping, I committed the irreparable. Since she had left me with my little brother for a few hours, I pushed him from the top of our balcony on the 11th floor of the building in which we lived. After committing the crime, I called the police, my father, and my stepmom to tell them that there had been an accident at home because my brother had tripped and fallen. And it was after we took him to the hospital that, in his distress, my father confided in me, telling me how much he was afraid of losing another son. That's when he started telling me his version of the story about what had happened between my mother and him. He told me that during this period when they were going through financial crisis in his couple, after my birth, Mom had become more and more demanding. She had a hard time accepting that the standard of living had declined. She had started to become verbally abusive, and at the end, she cheated so she could get maintenance from other men. And so it was after discovering her infidelity that Mom could not bear the shame and decided to file in for a divorce to run away from my dad with me. He also made me understand that Mom had never accepted that Dad would see me ever again.
He even tried in 1,000 ways to find me, at least to give me the love he had for me. But Mom had firmly decided not to let him have an opportunity to see me anymore because she was feeling guilty. Listening to his version of the story, I realized all this time my mom had been lying to me. She stuffed my head with all those lies so I wouldn't try to see Dad again. She decided to make me suffer from this emotional lack only because of her personal demons. I could not bear the guilt that invaded me, and I confessed to my father that I was the one who had pushed my brother from the balcony. I told Dad that I was ready to take the responsibility of everything that was coming my way legally. And before he could even form a phrase, I reported myself to the police that were waiting outside. And that's how I find myself in this situation today. My life was shattered because of a lie.